Here begins the deposition of Sandra Kemper. Today's date is June 15th, 2020. Time on the monitor is 12:12. Counsel, please identify yourself and whom you represent.
My name is Clint Kelly. I represent Mary Beth Riley.
Greg Conley on behalf of the defendants.
Would the court reporter please swear in the witness?
You raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Would you state your full name for the arbitrator, please?
Sandra Jane Kemper.
Ms. Kemper, are you a licensed practical nurse?
I am.
I'm taking your deposition today to determine what you'll testify to if you're called as a witness at the arbitration. You ever get a deposition before?
Yes.
All right, how many times?
Just one.
All right, and what was that case about?
Well, it was a long time ago, and I'm sort of vague on what all that happened, but I worked at the Center for Women's Pavilion Hospital at Baptist Hospital, and we did more than just women. We did outpatient procedures. And this one man had an adrenal gland issue, but he was there for a outpatient procedure, and he was a brittle diabetic. He did not take his insulin as he was instructed before he came, but after surgery, he went home and died at home. So I had to give a deposition for that because I was the nurse that took his medical history on the phone, and I admitted him and gave him his pre-op medications.
Who were you working for at that time?
Baptist Hospital.
And you testified as a fact witness?
Yes.
You probably remember a little bit about the rules in that I ask you questions, you answer questions, and if you have any difficulty in understanding my question, just ask me to rephrase and I'd be glad to do that.
I will.
I presume before today you've spoken to Mr. Conley, is that right?
Correct.
All right. And tell me what you and Mr. Conley have spoken about.
Objection. I'm representing her in her capacity as a former employee of Hickory Hills. She's asked me to represent her through this process.
When did she ask you to represent her?
On Friday.
On Friday.
Yes.
So she was formally, well, let me ask you, up until Friday, were you not represented by Mr. Conley?
I had spoken to him several times on the phone. I considered him as my attorney.
When did you hire Mr. Conley?
Just Friday.
But before Friday, you thought he was your attorney?
Well, I thought he was representing me. I guess I was mistaken.
Yeah, I wondered if I was mistaken. I thought I was free to communicate with you. How have you hired him? You paid him?
No.
But you've asked him formally to represent you
Yes.
as of Friday?
Yes.
All right. At the times that you spoke to Mr. Conley before you hired him, was he representing you?
No.
What did you talk about then?
I don't think I'm supposed to tell you that.
Well, ma'am, if he wasn't your lawyer before Friday, those information or conversations are not privileged.
Ms. Kemper, you can, if you recall what we spoke about the one time that we spoke.
We
before.
spoke, he told me about the deposition and what time I was supposed to be here and that sort of thing.
That's all you've told Mr. Conley before Friday?
He did ask me if I remember Joyce Myers, and I told him I did.
And what else did y'all talk about?
The kind of resident she was at Hickory Hills. I told him she was very sweet, very kind, very gentle.
Ms. Kemper, I will warn you, make sure you don't confuse the conversations that we had on Friday versus the first conversation and the only conversation we had before that time back a year or so
Okay, well,
before.
then
Just
that's
make
it.
sure you don't disclose that information
I
that we
told you,
discussed
I've
on Friday.
already told him that.
So your testimony is before Friday, you'd never told Mr. Conley what happened on the evening of January 27, 2019.
Objection.
You can answer.
Am I supposed to answer?
You can tell him what you recall about any conversations that we'd had prior to Friday.
We just talked about being here at the deposition and that I would
Well,
You would be asking questions?
you're confusing what we talked about on Friday
Okay.
versus what we talked about when we spoke the one time before Friday. So make sure you only tell him what we talked about during that initial, first, and only conversation we had before Friday.
Mr. Conley, I'm going to ask the questions. And the question on the table is very simple. Did you tell Mr. Conley before Friday of the events of what occurred on the evening of January 27, 2019?
No.
Hold on, don't answer that question. I don't want her to confuse anything that we talked
Craig,
about
you've
on
said that
Friday.
3
I know it,
times.
and you just summarily just shut me down. And I'm not going to let you just summarily shut me down. I represent this lady. I don't want her disclosing any attorney-client conversations that are privileged and protected that we had on Friday. And I don't want her confusing those conversations with the one and only prior conversation we had, which was October 21st of 2019. You can ask her what she recalls from October 21st of 2019.
I'm going to ask her what I want to ask her. You go ahead and make your objections, all right?
If-
And let me explain to you. There's a difference between talking to your client and coaching your client. Now, if you want to take a break and talk to your client and get things situated, that's fine. But I'm learning this for the first time right now on camera. And I'm having to change my entire routine. I would have appreciated you letting me know before I walked in the door today that you're representing this lady.
Well, this was Friday afternoon,
You
and
could
this
have
is
called
Monday
me.
morning.
You could have called me. You could have emailed me, but you didn't. And that's not cool, and you know it. So I'm going to let you
There's
talk.
a lot of things that hadn't been cool in this case.
Okay, well, this adds to the list.
So
And I would have appreciated if you told me before now. So I'm going to take 5 minutes. You talk to Miss Kemper, and you get square what she can and can't say.
I've just told you what she can and can't say.
I
She
know
can-
what to say about October. I don't remember what we talked about in October.
She can talk about October 21st of 2019 when I spoke to her on the phone. She could not talk about Friday, June the 12th.
Before Friday, June the 12th of this year, did you tell Mr. Conley anything about what occurred on the evening of January 27, 2019?
No.
So you didn't tell him anything about what you saw or
No.
what you did that evening?
No.
Did you tell anybody else what you saw or what you observed on the evening of January 27, 2019?
Anybody else, as in
Anybody, ma'am.
maybe somebody and my husband?
Anybody else?
No.
Okay. Here's what I'm trying to find out. Did you tell anybody before Friday that you saw Miss Myers in the hallway outside her room at 7 o'clock at night?
No.
So how would Mr. Conley know that?
I don't know.
Have you told anybody that
My
you saw
husband.
besides, let me get my question out, besides your husband, that you saw Miss Myers outside her room at 7 o'clock at night
No.
on January 27, 2019?
No.
Got your testimony and you're standing by it.
Yes.
Have you been provided any depositions to read?
No.
Have you gone over any records?
No.
Have you read anything having to do with this case other than obviously the subpoena you were sent?
No.
All right. Well, let's begin with the beginning. Tell me about your background. I'm interested in where you graduated and just walk me forward through your professional education from there.
I went to Baptist Hospital School of Practical Nursing and graduated in 1984. I worked at Baptist Hospital for 11 years. After that, I went to the Baptist Women's Pavilion Hospital that later was bought by the Center for Spinal Surgery. I stayed there a few years. Then I went to Nashville Surgery Center. And the reason I left Nashville Surgery Center was they closed. Then I went to, I took care of a friend of mine from our church for 2.5 years. She had Alzheimer's. Took care of her in her home. Later went to work, I worked for about 3 months at St. Thomas, Midtown, which is formerly Baptist Hospital. I only worked there 3 months because I got the job at Hickory Hills, which is closer to my house. Was 5 minutes from where I lived as opposed to 20 miles.
Okay. Prior to working at Hickory Hills, had you had any training or experience working in a facility that takes care of patients who have Alzheimer's?
Just patients that we might have had at the hospital. And my friend that I took care of for 2.5 years was Alzheimer's.
Okay. Do you recall your date of hire at Hickory Hills?
August 2019.
And when did you leave Hickory Hills?
I'm not exactly sure of the date. It was in the summer of 2020. No, that's not correct. I worked there almost a year.
Okay, so sometime approximately in September of 2020 is when you left.
This is 2020.
Yeah, we're not to September yet.
Oh, you're right. I've got a little
Feels
confused
like
there.
feels like
It does, doesn't it? Sure does.
I need to correct something. I went to work there in 2018.
That's what makes it easier
August.
for me to understand.
And then I worked
Okay.
almost a year.
Okay.
Then I left because I found the job at Hickory Hills because it was closer to home.
Okay. You said that twice, and I believe you.
Okay,
You think you left sometime around August of 2019?
correct.
Okay. And your last employer before working at Hickory Hills was what?
I worked for the man that was the husband of the lady that I took care of that had Alzheimer's for 2.5 years.
Okay. And what was his name?
Arthur Frazier. He lived in Hendersonville.
And how many hours a week did you work for Mr. Frazier?
I worked 5 days a week from 7:30 to 2:30.
Was he the one who had Alzheimer's?
No, his wife.
And I'm almost scared to ask, but why did you leave Mr. Frazier to come work at Hickory Hills?
More money.
How much money were you earning from Mr. Frazier?
$13 an hour.
And what was your initial pay at Hickory Hills?
$24 an hour.
And before Mr. Frazier, who was your employer?
Nashville Surgery Center.
Right. And you left there because they folded, correct?
They closed.
So I presume other than the fact they closed, you left on good terms, right?
Oh, yes.
All right. Tell me what type of training program Hickory Hills had when you were hired.
I was in orientation on the medicine cart, with another nurse for about 4 days, 4 nights.
Did you shadow with that nurse?
I did.
Any other type of training or education you received at the time you were hired other than that shadowing with the nurse?
No.
The reason I asked is some facilities have a training program you'll go through, which is actually like an educational session. They'll sit you down, they have a class, they play videos, you're handed books and pamphlets and things of that nature. They require you to take a test. And I'm not saying they have it at Hickory Hills, but some places have that. You didn't have any of that at Hickory Hills?
No.
Okay. And who was it at Hickory Hills who hired you?
the director was a man. I don't remember his name. It was before Marcy came and before Marissa.
Does Quentin ring a bell?
No,
And you left sometime around August of 2019, approximately. Why did you leave Hickory Hills?
well, down the street from Hickory Hills was a new place called Clarendale, and two of my sisters and my sister-in-law went there to look at Clarendale because we were looking for a place for my sister, my older sister, who was in a memory care facility in Plano, Texas, and we wanted her closer to her family because there was no family there for her. So we went to Clarendale, and while I was there, I put in my application, and they hired me. And after they hired me, my sister passed away, so I just stayed.
Did you leave Hickory Hills on good terms?
Yes.
What was the shift you worked at Hickory Hills?
3 to 11.
And what would be the term that you would call that shift? Is that afternoon shift, night shift? What's the term for it?
We just called it second shift.
Second shift, all right. And did you work the second shift consistently throughout your employment there?
No.
All right, tell me what other shifts you worked.
I would work, if someone was absent or called in sick, I would fill in for them. Like sometimes I worked 11 to 7, sometimes I would work 7 to 3, sometimes I would work 7 to 7.
Okay. And this is where I'm getting confused, not your fault, mine. 3 to 11 sounds like 3 in the afternoon to 11 at night.
Correct.
11 to 7 sounds like 11 in the morning to 7 at night.
Correct.
7 to 3 sounds like 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon.
7 to 7. 7 to 3 that's correct. But sometimes I worked 7 to 7.
Okay. I'm looking at, I wrote down what looks like 4 shifts here, and it's probably my error. You said you worked the 3 to 11 shift, which is the second shift.
Correct.
All right. You said you also worked an 11 to 7 shift,
Correct.
and then you said you worked a 7 to 3 shift.
Sometimes 7 to 3, sometimes 7 to 7. The front nurse and the back nurse worked different shifts.
Okay. What would you call the 11 to 7 shift?
Midnight.
Okay, so that's 11 at night to 7 in the morning.
Correct.
All right. What would you call the 7 to 3 shift?
Days.
And what would you call the 7 to 7?
Days.
Okay. All right. Was the second shift, though, the shift you typically worked?
That's what it was hired for.
Okay. Do you know what shift Carly Willis worked?
7A to 7P.
Okay. The day shift.
Correct.
Do you know what shift Kay Holmes typically worked?
11 to 7.
Ms. Kemper, do you know what the reason was why some nurses worked 12 hours while others worked 8?
After I went to work there, when I first went to work there, the regular hours were in the morning 7 to 3, but they changed because census went down, so the nurse in the back started working 7A to 7P, and then whoever was there from 3 to 11 took over for her when she left. Whoever was there from 3 to 11 had the whole building.
Can you tell me approximately when the 7 to 7 shift started? And I don't mean time, but what month and what year?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Do you remember if it started happening before Miss Myers died?
Before.
Okay. And I would presume on the day that Miss Myers died, you were working the 7 to 7 shift?
3 to 11.
Okay. So on January 27, 2019, there was a 3 to 11 shift, the second shift that you worked. There was an 11 to 7 shift, which was the midnight shift, correct?
Correct.
That Kay Holmes worked. And there was a day shift of 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. Correct?
At that time, it was 7 in the morning till 7
All right,
at night.
got you. I just want to make sure I've got the shifts correct, the proper
Right.
day shift. All right. And was Carly working the 7 to 7 shift? Carly Willis,
Which day?
January 27th.
The day Miss Myers fell?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, she was.
Okay. So, if I've got my times right, it appears there were you and Miss Willis were working the same shift, just different hours. You were working 3 to 11, she's working 7 to 7.
No.
Okay.
The day that Miss Myers fell, I was working 7A to 7P because someone else didn't show up.
Okay. So you're working 7 to 7. And then Carly comes to relieve you on the second 7 to 7.
She was there on the back hall.
Let's start over. Let's just start over. Me, not you.
Okay.
January 27th, 2019. You're working the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift, correct?
Correct.
What was Carly Willis working?
7A to 7P. No,
No, that can't be right.
I'm
So-
sorry. She came in at 7. She relieved me, and
She-
I left. We did count, medicine count, and I left.
So what was her shift?
Well, she came in at 7. I don't know what time she left.
Okay, so you don't know whether she worked an additional 12 hours or she stayed there until 3 in the afternoon,
I don't.
or 3 a.m., excuse me. And then what was Kay Holmes' shift?
11 to 7.
Were there any other LPNs working on the 27th of January 2019?
Just the ones up front on days.
Okay, and who were they?
The one that worked in the medicine room, well, her first name was Nora. I do not remember her last name.
Okay. Do you know what her shift was?
She came in at 7 and left at 3 because she had a son.
Okay. Anybody else?
Not that I can recall.
Okay, so we've got, for January 27, 2019, we've got Sandy Kemper, Carly Willis, Kay Holmes, and Nora were the 4 LPNs working that day.
Correct. I worked 7A because Nora was not there. That's why I came in at 7.
Okay.
She was off that day.
Okay. So there were 3 LPNs working that day.
Correct.
And if my math is correct, that means that from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., you're the only LPN working that shift.
No, there was somebody in the back, and I don't remember who it was. Somebody in the back. They had. It's kind of hard to explain. They had to have someone in the back to give the medications to the residents back there, but I don't remember who it was.
Okay, so there are 4 LPNs working on the 27th. You just don't know the name of the 4th one.
Right.
And that person's working the back. Do you know what shift that person had?
7 to 3 probably.
Does that LPN have any responsibility for the residents on the front?
No.
So Carly Willis had responsibility for patients in the front.
I was the front. She was the back.
She was the back.
When I left at 7,
Okay.
she took over the front. She had the whole thing just like I did at one time.
All right. Let's start over again. We're going to get this right. It's just me. I'm sorry. I'm slow. 7A to 7P is your shift on the
That
27th.
particular day.
Hear me out, okay?
Okay,
We'll get through this a lot quicker if you listen to my whole question.
okay,
From 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on January the 27th, that's the only day we're going to talk about here. You worked the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift, correct?
correct,
And you were responsible for the front,
correct,
all right? Carly Willis came and worked from 7 p.m. to whatever. You didn't know when she got off, but you said she was responsible for what, front or back?
both,
Both. Nurse Holmes, Kay Holmes, worked the shift of 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Correct?
correct,
And was she responsible for front, back, or both?
both,
And then we have a fourth nurse, whose name escapes you right now, who you believed worked from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., who handled the back, correct?
correct.
All right. If I'm correct, again, that means you're the only nurse working the front from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
That's correct.
All right. This fourth nurse would be the only nurse working the back from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Correct.
And then anything after 7 p.m. up until 11 p.m., you've got Carly Willis handling both.
Correct.
And then from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., you've got Kay Holmes handling both.
Correct.
All right. That's very helpful. Now, during the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift, we're going to focus strictly on your shift in the front. How many residents were you responsible for?
Oh my gosh, half. I don't know how many that would be.
Okay. Can you approximate what the census was?
Probably 30.
Was that more or less than the previous year?
I don't know.
Do you recall whether there was a drop in census from 2018 to 2019?
I do not know.
And do you know approximately how many residents there were in the back?
No.
Probably half.
I think there were less, but I'm not sure.
Okay. During your shift, well, strike that. What was the caregiver's shift?
2 to 10.
Two p.m. to 10 a.m.?
2 p.m. till 10 at night.
Right. And did they also work 10 to 2?
You mean the next shift?
Yes, ma'am. What was the next shift?
The next shift came in at 10 and got off at 6.
Okay. And what was the final shift?
Day shift was 6 to 2.
So if we work backwards, morning is 6 a.m. to 2 p.m.,
Correct.
afternoon's 2 p.m. to 10 p.m.,
Correct.
and night would be 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Correct.
Great. How many caregivers typically worked the 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift?
Usually 5 or 6.
How about the 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift?
3 or 4.
And the 10 to 6 shift?
2.
Do you recall on your shift on January 27, 2019, how many caregivers were working?
I don't remember.
Well, let's try to work this out as best we can. Do you remember Nurse Van was working your shift?
Nurse who?
I'm sorry, not Nurse Van. Caregiver, Maisha Van.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember anybody else?
Possibly Sandy,
There was another Sandy, wasn't there?
besides me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
I think your last name was Harris.
What about Miss Adams? Does that ring a bell?
No. You know the first name?
I do if I look it up.
I don't know it. I don't
Names
know
all
it
start to run together.
I can tell you. Deborah.
Deborah.
I know who that was. Yes.
Was Deborah working your shift?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else you can think of besides Maisha Van, Sandy Harris, and Deborah Adams?
No.
Do you recall whether on your shift on January 27, 2019, feeling as if y'all were shorthanded that day?
I don't remember.
If you were shorthanded, what would you do? What's the protocol?
The caregivers would divide all the patients up and each one would have an equal number. And then they help each other.
Do you recall if that's how it was handled on the 27th?
I don't remember.
Who was your immediate supervisor in January of 2019?
Marcy?
And did you or were you paid by JEA Senior Living?
I believe so.
All right. Before we dive into the events of January 27, 2019, let me ask you some questions about your job in the facility in general. How would you describe toileting?
Taking a resident to the restroom or to their room and changing them in their room. If they could go to the bathroom, they went to the bathroom. If not, they had to go to their room and they would put the resident on the bed and change them, clean them up, that sort of thing.
Did all residents require assistance with toileting?
No, not all of them.
Was toileting a serious issue?
Yes.
And why was toileting a serious issue?
It was important that they were kept clean and dry. Because if they didn't, they got, I would call it diaper rash or decubitus, or they'd get sore.
Is the term that's customarily used is when a resident's getting wet? When they urinate and
Yeah.
get diaper rash?
Yeah.
And that's a problem that you all tend to avoid when you're caring for residents, right?
That's true.
And do you agree that when residents aren't being toileted properly, not only would they urinate on themselves and develop a diaper rash, but also some would try to go to the bathroom by themselves?
That's possible.
And that's one among many reasons why you want to try to keep them dry.
Correct.
Did you ever receive any complaints pertaining to Maisha Van about her failing to keep her residents dry?
No.
Did you ever receive any complaints about Miss Van at all?
No. Not that I recall.
Did you ever observe a fall on the premises?
I have observed falls on the premises, yes.
Okay. Can you recall how many times?
Oh, I don't know. But No, I don't know how many times.
All right. Do you know the circumstances of any of them?
Sometimes they would get up out of bed. If they got out of bed and the sensor went off, before you could get to the room, they were in the floor. It just couldn't be prevented. Sometimes they fell in the hallway. Sometimes they fell in the dining room.
Were any of those falls preventable?
I'm sure they were not. If you couldn't see a resident getting up and get to them before they fell, if they're in their room with the door closed and they're supposed to be asleep and they got up and fell, by the time the sensor went off, you couldn't get there that fast.
I just want you to assume that there's testimony from other nurses who said that you could get to them fast if the motion sensor detector alarm went off. Just assume that that's a fact. You disagree with that?
I do disagree, highly disagree.
Okay. Then what's the point of the motion sensor alarm system?
Well, I don't know, but if the motion sensor went off and the room that you were trying to get to was on the back side of the building, you couldn't get there fast enough for them to catch them before they fell. No way.
Had you ever responded to a motion alarm and gone into the room and found the resident on the floor?
Absolutely.
How many times did that happen?
I don't know how many.
Did you talk to management about that?
Yes.
And what did management tell you?
Well, I don't recall that either. They probably said do the best you can, which is what we did. We would go as fast as we could to get to the resident before they. And let me tell you this. Sometimes the motion sensors went off and the resident wasn't up. They went off if they turned over in the bed, if they fanned the cover. Any kind of movement, any motion, the sensor went off. We had to go every single time to see whether they were up or not.
All right. Again, that was your job, wasn't it?
That was my job.
And you were
part of
trained to-
my job,
Right.
yes.
Trained to do that.
And part of the caregiver's job.
So you go to management and you tell management that we respond to these motion alarms, but people are falling anyway. And then you say they probably responded to you and told you, well, do the best you can.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, you did report to management,
Yes.
but you don't remember what the response was.
No.
Okay. Did you go anywhere else to try to get some help in that regard?
No. Not that I know of. Where else was there to go?
Did you make a written record of these occasions?
Every single fall had to be an incident report.
Okay. And did you report whether the alarm system was on
Yes.
and that it had failed to prevent the fall?
Yes.
So there should be records of situations where residents have fallen and caregivers have reported in writing that they couldn't get there in time.
Yes.
Can you ever think of an occasion where the motion sensor detector went off and you or other staff members were able to prevent a fall?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that occasion.
Well, if a resident was starting to get out of bed, just starting to get up, sitting on the side of the bed maybe, and we got there in time.
From the time that the motion sensor alarm went off, how long did it customarily take for a staff member to respond?
Just depends on where the room was.
Okay. My question was bad. I'll try it better, more precise. When the motion sensor detector went off, was it customary that the staff members would respond immediately?
Yes.
And depending on where the room was how long it would take for that staff member to get to the room.
That is correct.
So you would agree, at least to that extent, the motion sensor alarm system did its job, didn't it? By alerting people.
In the most part, yes.
And in some cases, if the resident was slowly trying to get out of bed, the motion sensor alarm did its job and was able to prevent a fall.
Correct.
Do you agree that the motion sensor was supposed to be on every time a resident was in their room?
Yes.
And how did you all ensure that was the case?
If we put a resident in the room, we turned the motion sensor on.
That was just habit, right?
That was a habit.
Like getting up in the morning, brushing your teeth, that's just something you did.
Yes.
Now, each of these doors in the facility had locks, correct?
Correct.
And the locks had a master key.
Correct.
Who was responsible for holding the master key?
We all had a master key.
I presume none of the residents or their families were given a
The
master key.
families
Wait,
had,
miss.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, because this
I'm
is
sorry.
part of it. I've got to get my question
Okay,
fully
sorry.
out. Okay, so just kind of
I
train
thought you were
yourself.
finished.
Yeah, wait till.
Y'all don't talk over one another. Court reporter gets very frustrated.
Okay, sorry.
Let him finish asking his question, and he'll give you plenty of time to answer.
Otherwise, I got to keep asking it over and over again. Did the residents or their family members get a master key?
Yes.
Who?
Whoever the caregiver was. For instance, Miss Meyer's daughter had a key.
Okay, I think I know where you're going, but let me back up on this. Were all the locks controlled by the same key?
No.
So the lock on room 21 would be different from the lock on room 20.
Can I just say something?
Yes, ma'am.
The locks were all different, but the master keys could open any of the doors. But the family member's key would only open that door.
Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
You're sure of that?
Yeah.
Now, the other question I had though was, would any of the caregivers or the nurses give a resident or a family member a master key so they could use it?
Yes.
Why?
If they were moving things into the room. If they had to get in the room to put something in there.
Okay. Why wouldn't you just give that person the actual key for that lock?
We didn't have those keys at the nurse's station. All we had were master keys. The individual rooms were the patient's family, the resident's family had those keys.
I'm with you there 100%. So I'm thinking that as these people are moving into new rooms, they're given the key for that particular lock on that door. Am I right about that?
I don't know.
Okay.
They may give them a master key.
Where I'm getting confused about this is you're giving the resident or their families the ability to not only get into their room, but also any other room they want to get into by doing that, aren't you?
If it was a new resident,
Right.
they may not have had a key to give to that family. They may not have given that family that key yet.
But do you agree with me that by giving a prospective or new family a master key, that new family has access to any one of the doors in the facility?
I agree.
And yet that was still done, correct?
Yes.
Was anyone there to observe the family moving into a new room
Yes.
to make sure that those people were moving things into their room and not maybe going into other rooms?
Well, the nurses were there to observe. The director of nursing's office was right there. She would be observing it.
Okay. So the protocol as you understood it in January of 2019 was if a new family were moving a resident into a room, you being nurses, the caregivers, or the director, could observe that occurring so you could make sure that they were actually moving people in and not using the key on other doors.
Correct.
And on my limited knowledge of the facility, I do have pictures here, but it seems from the nurses' station, you can see all the rooms, the doors to all the rooms along each hallway. Is that right?
Not the back hall.
I'm sorry, I'm at the front.
Yeah,
You're exactly
yes.
right. The front.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mary Beth Riley, she had a key to her mother's door in room 21, correct?
Correct.
Did she have a master key?
No.
And was it customary to give family members keys to their loved one's room?
Yes, one person, one key.
Now, while we're talking about Miss Riley and Miss Myers, was it your understanding on January 27th of 2019 that Miss Myers' door was always to be locked when she was not in there?
Yes.
And that was at the request of Miss Riley, correct?
Yes.
And everyone at the facility knew that.
Yes.
Miss Kemper, how did you meaning the nurses and the caregivers, strike that, let me try this different way, that's a bad question. What is a service plan?
A service plan?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what a care plan is. I don't know what a service plan is.
Okay, that's fine. What's a care plan?
It's what we're to do to how we're to take care of the resident.
Okay. And does every resident have a care plan?
Yes.
And are those care plans updated quarterly?
Yes.
And how do the nurses and caregivers become acquainted with what's in the care plan?
You go get it out. The care plans were kept in, I'm pretty sure, Marcy's office, the director of nursing's office.
And were they kept in a file cabinet?
I believe so.
So if you wanted to find out what the care plan was for, say, Miss Myers, you could go to Marcy's office, open up the file cabinet, thumb through and find M for Myers, open up the folder, and there's the care plan.
With her permission. We wouldn't just go through her file cabinets without her knowing it.
I understand that. Let's presume you,
Yeah.
for the purposes of my question,
That
you
is
got
correct.
permission. Okay. Now, were you all trained or taught at Hickory Hills that you were supposed to read the care plan for the residents?
Yes.
And how often were you supposed to read the care plan for the residents?
As often as we needed to.
And when would you need to go look at the care plan?
If you had a question about something, some care for her, if you had a question, it would be on the care plan.
All right. And if a resident were new to a facility, was it the customer practice for all the caregivers and nurses to go look at the care plan before providing care to the resident?
Yes.
And when the care plan was updated quarterly, were you all, when I say you all, I'm talking about the staff, made aware of the updates of the care plans?
Yes.
And how were y'all made aware of it?
A lot of the times we did the updates. If it was updated quarterly, we were supposed to go in the office and get the care plans and look at them to see if there were any changes. If there were any changes, the director would have told us, the director of nursing would have told us, or we would know it ourselves if we did it.
Okay.
And when we took report in the afternoon, if something changed, we tell each other.
Okay. But if I understand what you're saying, the staff was also charged with the responsibility of looking at the updates to the care plan for each of the residents when they were updated.
Correct.
Did you, I think you've already told me, that you had some input in updating some care plans?
Some.
And how would you go about doing that? What's the process for that?
You get the care plan, the original care plan, and add to it. Add notes. And there was a form that you could add to it.
And then would that form be taken by someone in management and actually have it typed into the care plan?
Some of them had lines that you fill out.
Okay.
Right on.
But you know some of them were typed as well,
I'm
correct?
sure, yes.
All right. And so if there need to be amendments to the care plan, you're saying we could either write some notes out or we could actually fill it in some sections?
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
And the not only the nurses, but also the caregivers looked at the care plans.
I don't know if the caregivers ever looked at them.
Okay. But the nurses did.
We did.
Do you recall ever seeing any of the caregivers either looking at a care plan or being trained on how to look at a care plan?
No.
How did the caregivers find out what was in the care plan for each resident? If they were.
I don't know.
Did the nurses, well, as speaking for yourself, did you believe that the caregivers were acquainted with the care plan or were instructed on how to use the care plan?
I don't know that they had to use the care plan. They just took care of the residents, their needs, their baths and their showers and their clothes and their food and their toileting.
And where were the progress notes kept?
In the computer.
And what was the protocol at the facility for looking at the progress notes?
If something we were instructed, if something happens that everybody needed to know, you put it in a progress note in a system called YARDY.
Can you spell that for me, please?
YARDY.
Okay.
If nothing was different, if nothing changed, if everything was the same, we didn't chart on progress notes every night.
If there were a change in the progress notes, how did you and the other nurses become aware of it?
We talk about it during report. If I added something, I'd tell the next one. If she added something, she'd tell the next one, or somebody else would tell me.
All right. If there were a fall on the premises, would that be recorded in the progress notes?
And the incident report.
And the incident report. And Ms. Kemper, if there were a fall on the premises, say in the preceding shift, how would you be notified of it customarily?
They possibly would call you at home.
Okay.
And let us know what happened.
Okay.
Or the next day on when we give report.
Any other way you can think of? I'm talking about the ones you didn't observe, obviously. I mean, ones you see, you know about.
Well, a caregiver might tell you somebody fell.
I'm just trying to understand, was there some system at Hickory Hills in 2018 and 2019 when you worked there for making sure that all of the nurses were aware when residents fell?
Well, yes, progress notes,
Got that?
incident reports,
Got that?
report,
Okay. Nurses report?
yes,
Okay. Anything else?
and phone calls.
And phone calls. All right. And briefly describe for the arbitrator what the nurse's report is, what it consists of.
The nurse coming on and the nurse that was there, we get together, we talk about we have a list, every resident's name on a list, and we make notes during the day. What happened? So-and-so did this, so-and-so did that. Nobody, so-and-so wouldn't take their medications. So-and-so was combative. So-and-so was disoriented or confused. And we write all these notes down and we pass it along to the next person. And they write what you say on that. They had the same list of resident names.
Do you know what happens to those lists when they're transmitted from one nurse to another?
It's just their own personal notes. So whatever they either take them home with them or throw them away.
And in some instances, if necessary, what's contained in those notes may make their way into their progress notes.
Yes.
And is that when you would enter into the YARDY system
Yes.
and type stuff in?
Yes.
And was the terminal, the keyboard for that at the nurse's station?
Yes.
And did you need a password to get in
Yes.
and do it? Did the caregivers have access to YARDY?
No.
Just the nurses and
Correct.
management? Do you recall what level of toileting assistance Miss Myers required?
She could tell you if she needed to go to the bathroom, but you had to take her to the bathroom yourself. She could not get up and stand up by herself.
Would you agree that the toilet assistance she required was extensive?
No, she could help you stand up. You just had to pull her pants down and let her sit and do her job, and she could help you kind of hold on to the rail, and she would stand up and you clean her up and pull her pants up and put her back in a wheelchair.
Do you know why the facility would classify her toilet assistance as extensive?
No.
You disagree with that it was extensive?
I don't know what extensive is.
I don't either.
Extensive, we took her to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. She could help you stand a little bit and hold on. You had to hold on to her because she was a little wobbly, but you had to pull her pants down. She could sit, do her job, and you clean her, let her stand back up, clean her up, pull her pants back up, put her back in the chair. Now, I don't know how extensive that is. She had to have help.
I presume that the Hickory Hills management never taught you what extensive toileting assistance means, correct?
I don't know what it means. Extensive toileting, maybe that means for the residents that could not go to the bathroom and they had to be taken to their room and put on the bed and changed. Maybe that's extensive. Because every time someone toilets or urinates or whatever on themselves, in their clothes, they have to be cleaned, wiped. We had special wipes. Maybe that's extensive.
Okay. Was there any special attention required of residents who had extensive toileting assistance needs?
Objection. You can answer. You can answer if you can.
I don't know how. I thought I just answered it.
You did. I actually think you did. I'm just asking for the record. Are you aware of any special attention that these residents needed, other than what you've described?
No.
Objective.
Was it foreseeable to nurses and caregivers that if residents who had toileting needs, like Miss Myers, didn't get their needs satisfied, that they could get wet and get diaper rash?
Objection.
That was foreseeable, wasn't it?
Objection.
I don't know.
Well, I believe you said earlier, you agreed with me, that a resident who gets wet and doesn't get toileted sufficiently can develop diaper rash.
That's true.
Okay, you know that
Yes.
going into it.
Yes.
That's what I mean by foreseeable.
Okay.
Was it also foreseeable that a resident who got wet and developed diaper burn because they weren't toileted properly might try to go to the bathroom by themselves?
That's possible.
Objection.
Did Miss Myers have any judgment issues that you were aware of?
She did not realize that she could not walk and she couldn't stand up. She was always trying to stand up. She didn't realize that she couldn't walk. She had already fallen and broken one hip.
So you agree she did have some poor judgment issues,
I do.
and that stayed the way throughout her residency, correct?
As long as I was there.
And how were you all trained or taught to handle those poor judgment issues?
You just had to watch them closely.
Do you know what Miss Myers' fall potential was?
She was a great fall risk.
And how did the facility teach you all or train you all to handle someone who was a high fall risk?
They have to be watched closely. I could see Miss Myers from from the nurse's station all the way down the hall. And that's where she stayed, in that one hall, up and down every day, all day long. Up and down, paddling in her little wheelchair.
So watch them closely.
Correct. You try to tell them, but they don't understand.
And how many times did Miss Myers fall?
She fell once after I went there and broke her hip. She was in her room. She got up and fell.
Were you present when it happened?
No. She had a roommate at that time, and that lady came out and told me.
Do you know why she tried to stand up?
I don't know. She had already been in bed. It was after she went to bed. She had her pajamas on.
Okay.
They were both in bed.
Okay. And how was that reported to you?
The lady in the room with her came and told me.
Her roommate?
Yes.
Okay.
Her roommate could walk and talk.
Do you remember her roommate's name?
No,
Did she still have a roommate on January 27th of 2019?
she did not.
So when you found out that Miss Myers had fallen and broken her hip, what, if anything, did you do in response to that?
Well, when it first happened, we had to call the ambulance to come and get her. After that, she had to stay in bed for several days, and then we could start getting her up.
Anything else that you can think of?
We gave her pain medication.
Did the facility have to change its plan on how to watch her or care for her to make sure she didn't fall down again?
I don't know. I don't know how they could change it. We watched her closely while she was in the wheelchair. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm just asking you, after she falls and she breaks her hip, what, if anything, did you or the facility do to try to prevent her from falling again?
We encouraged her to ask for help if she
Okay.
has to get up.
All right. So encouraged to ask for help. Did y'all try to watch her even more closely?
Yes.
Okay. Try to watch more closely. Does that mean you got to keep an eye on her at all times?
Well, you can't see them all the time. As much as possible, as closely as possible.
From your observations working your shift, 7A to 7P, were there sufficient staff there to be able to keep an eye on her at all times?
Yes. Sometimes the patients, the residents that had to be watched closely were all put in maybe the TV room, and one person would sit there and watch them, so they couldn't get up. At one point, when Maisha was pregnant, that was her job.
To watch them more closely in the TV room?
Several of them,
Okay.
to make sure they would forget that they couldn't walk. They'd get up and try to walk, and she was there to help them to sit back down.
And how many residents would be brought into the TV room for that purpose?
At different times, it would be different numbers.
Was Miss Myers one of those people?
No, nope,
And why wasn't she?
because she was paddling around in her wheelchair. She didn't usually try to get up, but every now and then she would try to get up, and we could see her in the hallway.
So she needed to be watched more closely, but she didn't need to be put in the TV room and watched continuously.
Well, she would not have been a happy camper in that TV room. She liked to be on the go. But it was just up and down that hall. We could see her.
But was it customary for people to try to keep an eye on her at all times?
Yes,
That's the point.
yeah. She was a fall risk.
A high one.
Yes.
Do you know whether she had any other falls on the premises?
I don't know of any others.
If she had fallen on the premises, would you expect her to be told about it?
Yes, because she was my resident.
And that would be management's responsibility to let you know that?
It would be the nurse before me if she fell on that shift. The caregivers would tell me. The management would tell me.
Okay. If you had known that she had fallen another time, would it have made any difference to you in the type of care or treatment you provided to her?
No, we couldn't lock her in the room and not let her out.
We'll discuss that later. But would it have made any difference in the care that you provided to her if you'd known she'd fallen another time?
Just have to watch her more closely. That's all I can tell you.
Have you had a chance to look? Well, you told me you've not looked at the progress notes before today,
No.
have you, since you
No.
left the facility? All right. Let's go ahead and pre-mark this, Ms. Cortopore. This will be exhibit number 1. What you're looking at there, Ms. Kemper, are some progress notes that I was supplied by the facilities. This look like what you would see on computer?
Yes.
All right.
Can I move this over?
Absolutely. There should be plenty of room there. And Ms. Kemper, did you understand that Ms. Myers on January 27, 2019 was found on the floor in a fetal position with her britches down by her knees outside the bathroom?
I knew that she had fallen in her room.
Was there any more description other than that?
Not to me.
Okay. If you look through these progress notes, you'll scroll to page 2, which is Bates stamp number 0278 for the record. And first, what you're going to see, scroll down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down to September 4, 2018. And let me know when you get there.
I'm sorry, what was the date?
Sure, September 4, 2018,
This is
on the left-hand margin.
September 4th.
That entry.
Okay. Okay.
And let me read this aloud to you. It says, roommate called staff to room, and this resident was observed laying on her back with her head on bottom of the glider/rocker at foot of roommate's bed/small laceration. Looks like an LT dot of the center of top of head / nurse applied pressure / 911 was called, and she was transported to Hendersonville Hospital / POA met resident at ER / she fell at 8:15 p.m. and son-in-law brought her back in his car / POA said she will send orders she received in AM via fax or email. Is this the fall that you're referring to?
Yes.
And the roommate there is the roommate that apprised you of the fall?
Yes.
Okay.
And David Hayes was the nurse. And I think I was still in orientation.
Okay.
September.
And do you know
Maybe.
do you know what shift David Hayes worked?
3 to 11.
Was he still working at the facility in January of 2019?
I don't remember.
If you go up to September 30th of 2018, You see that?
Where it says resident found?
Yes, ma'am. Let me read that for the record. Resident found lying in the floor of her bedroom on her left side, noted WC in the bathroom. Resident's pants were below the knee, appears to have walked out of the bathroom with her pants down and fell. Resident states she was trying to walk and fell and hit her head on the door, crying with pain. I asked R.A. Tiambi to let resident stay still, called daughter, and made her aware of the fall and the complaints of left hip pain. 911 was called for transport to Hendersonville ER. EMS staff was stated that resident would need to go to Skyline Medical Center because of a dislocated left hip and that the resident was on blood thinners. Is that the first time you've ever read that?
To my knowledge.
Is that the first time you ever heard about that before today?
To my knowledge. This other one sounds familiar, though.
What's the other one?
The first one you read with
Right,
David
the roommate,
Hayes.
right. Got you on that. But this one, dated September 30, 2018, you never heard about this before today, did you?
No,
And you would have expected to have heard about it.
I
wouldn't
would
you?
have.
Do you note here where the person, is this Shirley Bass, is the one who's next to the progress note? Is that the person who writes this?
Yes,
Into the chart.
she was one of the LPNs on the.
Okay. So I know you weren't there. I know this is the first time you've heard about this, and I know you haven't had an opportunity to comment on this before today. But my question to you is this. Can you explain to me what she would be doing walking out of a bathroom with her pants down
She shouldn't have been.
if she were being watched closely?
Check the form.
She shouldn't be, should she? That's no, correct?
Correct.
And this is the type of thing, if I understand your testimony correctly, would be also within the nurse's report from one nurse to another.
Correct.
And also likely the caregivers would know about this as well, correct?
Correct.
Would you also expect to see some reference to this in her care plan?
Possibly.
I neglected to ask you with regard to the care plans, how were they enforced by the facility?
I don't know.
How did the facility measure progress on the goals set forth for each of the residents?
That would have been the responsibility of the director of nursing. So I don't know how she did it.
Were you all involved in participating and letting the director know how the goals were being met or not met for each resident?
Sure.
And how would you go about doing that?
Just go tell her.
Have you ever used something known as a resident service sign-off sheet?
I'm not familiar with that.
Did anyone at Hickory Hills ever tell you there was such a thing called a resident service sign-off sheet?
No.
over an hour if you want to take a
Sure,
break.
absolutely.
Just take one.
Going off the record, time on the monitor is 13:28. We're back on the record, time on the monitor is 13:42.
Ms. Kemper, I'm going to hand you what the facility has produced to me, which is a scoring system for the service plan. And just I want you to just kind of peruse through that and tell me if you've ever seen anything like that before.
I've never seen this.
Okay. If you will turn to page, you'll see at the bottom, well, you can go where it's highlighted. I highlighted it for you, so you don't have to go searching for it. It's page 366, and you're looking for this part right here. It's highlighted. Bait stamp 366.
It's highlighted in here on this
Should
one.
be. If it's not, I'm going to give you my copy.
Well, you better give it to me
All right.
then.
There you go. Under the assessment section, psychosocial, there's two subjects down below that under judgment. And the notation here is that the resident has occasional poor judgment issues, and there's an open parentheses, resident may resist care at times, needs protection and supervision because participant makes unsafe or inappropriate decisions, may have behavior management plan in place. Did you ever read that before about Miss Myers?
No.
And I presume no one in management had ever told you that either, correct?
No.
Had you ever seen that in a service plan?
No.
I mean care plan, I'm sorry. Okay. If you scroll ahead 2 more pages to page 368, and you'll see it there highlighted on the left.
Mm-hmm.
And under the assessment section, remember we talk about goals, and you agreed there are goals and ways to measure goals at the facility for each resident. Under the falls section there, the question is falls within the last 90 days, and you see there it says no falls,
I see
correct?
that. I see that.
Okay. That's on bait stamp page 368. If you simply go to the first page, top right-hand side, the assessment date is November 23rd, 2018. You see that?
I do.
So based on your independent knowledge and experience, she clearly had a fall within the previous 90 days, hadn't she?
Yes.
Let's make that the next exhibit, please.
Just have to form that last question.
She needs to mark that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Ms. Kemper, you would agree that if you're trying to gauge progress towards a goal in fall prevention for a resident, you got to know whether or not the resident has fallen at the premises, don't you?
Yes.
Let's turn our attention now to January 27, 2019. as I understand from Nurse Willis's testimony, you were the nurse responsible for giving out medication. Is that right?
Yes.
And tell me or walk me through the times that you would give medication to the residents.
In the morning.
Okay.
And it would depend on the resident how many medications they took. They didn't all take medications at the same time.
Okay.
So in the morning, possibly at lunch, some of them had to have medications for their stomach. Some of them had medications in the afternoon, and then some at bedtime, after 8 o'clock.
After 8. Now, if they had to have medicine at 8 o'clock and you were working 7A to 7P, were you the one that would administer the medication?
No,
That would be for the nurse who relieves you?
correct.
And can you approximate what time in the morning they would get their morning meds?
Usually when they're in the dining room at 7 or 7:30.
Okay. With breakfast?
Possibly with breakfast before. Some of the medicine had to be given with food.
And can you approximate for me what time they would get their lunch meds?
11:30.
And can you approximate for me what time they would get their afternoon meds?
4.
Were there also occasions where you would give meds at dinner time?
Sometimes.
Do you know when Miss Myers would get her medications?
I don't know what medication she was taking. And what time are you speaking?
Sure. I'm going to hand you what has been supplied to me by the facility as the MAR for Joyce Myers. And focusing our attention, let's just stick to January of 2019. Does this appear to you to be the medication administration record for that month for Miss Myers?
It does.
All right.
I don't know about y'all's copies, but I can't read the days.
I can't either.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I can't read the 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top where it's black and that where it's shaded.
Yeah, I can pull up the computer copy, which isn't a whole lot better, the computer version you sent me. If you got a better copy,
I think I do.
that would be beneficial. Let's take a break off the record.
Going off the record, time on the monitor is 13:50.
Okay.
We're back on the record, time on the monitor is 13:51.
Ms. Kemper, we've given you a better copy where the times and the dates are easier to see inside the boxes. And as I understand, in the black shaded area for each of the medications, those are days from 1 to 31. Is that right?
Correct.
And there are 3, in some places there are 3 rows, in some places there's 1 row. There are places where there are initials to be put in some places blood pressure, in some places pulse, as opposed to others where they're just initials. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. And then on the left-hand side, at the top of each box, looks like to me to be the actual drugs that are administered. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go through these. First of all, at the top of the left-hand column, I see reference to BD Integra syrup, 3 milliliters, I believe is what that is. Can you tell me what that is?
It's a vitamin.
Okay. And when would you give that vitamin to Miss Myers?
Once a month.
Okay.
Probably on the 1st.
Okay. The second drug is Carvedilol. Do you know what that is?
For blood pressure.
When would you give Miss Myers her blood pressure medication?
In the morning.
Would that be 7 to 7:30?
or 8 o'clock.
Okay. And that's a daily med?
Yes.
And then below that, cyano,
But are we talking, you said, what was the time you said? 7?
7 to 8
Talking about
a.m.
8. Oh, it says PM. But
Oh, you're looking at the PM. The AM's up at the top.
I think we're looking at the wrong lines here. I think you're getting confused on your boxes. I think you're looking at that AM and not that PM with the blood pressure medication.
The blood pressure's right here.
Right. It's that box.
Okay. But this one was given at night. This one, it was ordered at night.
Well,
And I gave it.
so which is it? You gave it to in the morning or you gave it at night?
At PM, I charted it at night.
Okay. So what time at night?
Bedtime,
What's bedtime?
between 8 and 10.
8 and 10 p.m.? Mm-hmm. Was that daily?
Yes.
Okay.
It says at bedtime. That it's daily.
Okay. Here's what confuses me. How are you giving medications from 8 to 10 p.m. when you're working 7 to 7?
Objection.
Is this the day that she fell?
I'm just asking, ma'am, you said you give this blood pressure medication at bedtime. I said, what time is bedtime? You said
I don't
8.
normally work 7 to 7. I worked 3 to 11.
Okay.
Except for every now and then I would work 7A to 7P.
Okay. So how many days in January did you work the 3 to 10 shift?
3 to 11.
3 to 11 shift?
I only worked 3 days a month, 3 days a week.
How many times did you work the 3 to 11 shift?
For
in
the whole
January?
month, I have no idea.
Okay. How many times did you work the 7 to 7 shift? In
Probably
the month of
one.
January?
I don't know. I didn't do that very often. I would just did it if somebody was out.
Okay. So everywhere where I see SK on this ledger here for each of these days for Carvedilol, you're giving medication to Miss Myers sometime between 8 to 10 p.m.
Correct.
And every time you give medication, you mark it in the chart with your initials, correct?
You had to put it in the computer.
And you also note the blood pressure,
Yes.
and you also note the pulse
Right.
every time you do it.
Not every medication, just blood pressure medication.
Right, that's what I'm talking
Yes,
about. I'm
that's
just reading
correct.
across here with you.
That is correct.
Okay. So if I'm reading this correctly, up until we get to the 27th, everywhere where I see SK is a day that you work the 3 to 11 shift.
Correct.
All right. Let's go down to Cyanocobalamin and tell us what that is.
It's a vitamin.
And when is that given?
Once a month.
All right. The next one is Ducosate.
That's a stool softener.
When you give Ducosate, Docusate.
It's the same as Colace.
When do you give it?
Usually in the morning. Or you can give it at night.
Okay, is it,
It says here I gave it at 8 p.m.
we're going to get to the times of when you give them. I just want to know, is there a time of day that you typically give it?
Whatever the doctor orders.
What did the doctor order here?
By mouth. Twice daily for stool. Twice a day. Once in the morning, once at night.
Okay. So where you give it at 8 p.m., your initials would be in that box, correct?
Correct.
And where you would give it at 8 a.m., your initials would be in that box, correct?
Correct.
All right. Let's go to Eliquis.
Okay.
What is Eliquis?
Eliquis is a blood thinner.
And how often would you give Eliquis each day?
This is ordered twice a day.
Okay, and when would you give Eliquis to Miss Myers?
On the first, I gave it after, it was when I was working 3 to 11 at 8 o'clock.
Okay. And when would she get it in the morning?
Probably at 7:30, between 7:30 and 8 when they were in the breakfast room.
When they were in the breakfast room.
Yes.
Okay. Levoxyl.
That's for your thyroid.
Yeah, thyroid.
Thyroid medication.
And when do you give that?
Early in the morning. You're supposed to give it before breakfast, before they eat.
Okay. The multivitamin with minerals,
Usually in the morning.
what time?
Before breakfast or with breakfast.
Okay. Polyethylene glycol,
That's Miralax. That's a powder you mix with water for laxative. Usually in the morning.
and vitamin D.
Once a week.
Okay. And then there are 2 acetaminophen here. It doesn't look like you gave any of those.
That's Tylenol.
Okay. Now, let's go back to the blood pressure medication here. Why was there no blood pressure given to Miss Myers on the 27th?
I have no idea. Looks like she didn't get anything on the 27th.
Do you know why?
Why?
I'm asking you, do you know
No.
why? Okay. Nurse Holmes testified that Miss Myers would receive her medications at dinner time. Do you disagree with that?
I gave the medications when they were ordered.
That's not my question, ma'am.
I disagree.
Nurse Holmes said that when she looked at your medication cart, when she started her shift on the evening of January 27, 2019, that Miss Myers' medication that was supposed to be given at dinner was not given. Do you disagree with that?
I disagree.
Did you see Miss Myers at dinner on the evening of January 27, 2019?
I did.
Where did you see Miss Myers?
In the dining room.
And where was she in the dining room?
Eating.
Where was she in the dining room?
Seated at a table. I don't know where.
Seated with whom?
I do not know with whom. They never sat in the same place every day.
And how is it you specifically recall seeing her at dinner on the evening of
I
January?
charted
I
that
got to
she
get my
was
question
there.
out. I know you want to answer badly. How do you know that you saw her at dinner on January 27, 2019?
We had a checkoff list.
Okay. And where's the checkoff list?
It's kept in the cafeteria, in the dining room, in a drawer,
And what's the purpose of the checkoff list?
to make sure everybody gets to dinner or to lunch or to breakfast.
Okay.
If
Do you have an independent recollection of seeing her there on that evening, or are you just going by the fact that because there's a checkoff, that's why you think she was there?
I know she was there.
Do you know where she went after dinner?
In her wheelchair, out of the dining room and paddling up and down the hallway, just like she always did.
Did you watch her continuously?
Continuously, no, I had to give medications.
Okay. Who else was watching her besides you?
Anybody that was walking up down the hall, the caregivers, the people in the dining room, the activities people.
Do you know that for a fact, or are you assuming that?
No, I know that
And how do you know it?
because I remember. I remember that night because Carly called me that night.
Okay. Tell me everything you remember from dinner time, which was what, about 6 o'clock? Mm-hmm. Until you left the shift that evening.
We called her Joyce. Can I just call her Joyce?
Absolutely.
Joyce went out of the dining room. She did not like to go into the TV room with the rest of the residents. She didn't like that. She didn't go in there. She liked to paddle up and down the hall, and that's what she did. She paddled up and down the hall. And sometimes she would pull herself along by the rail.
Anything else you remember from dinner time until you left the facility?
When I left the facility, she was sitting in her wheelchair right beside her bedroom door.
Anything else you remember?
I remember the people moving in. Another resident across the hall whose name was also Joyce. I believe it was Joyce Redding. Her family members were moving her furniture and her belongings. Joyce Redding's room was directly across the hall from Ms. Myers. Her family members were moving furniture. Now, they didn't always have to have their own furniture. The rooms came furnished. But if they wanted their own furniture, they could have it. So the family members were moving chest of drawers and a dresser and maybe a bed. I'm not sure about the bed. But to get to the room, they went through the laundry room, which the door was right across the hall from Joyce Redding's room, which is right beside where I went out to clock out. Because their vehicle that had all the belongings on it was parked in the employee parking lot. So all they had to do was go through that door, through the laundry room, and they'd be outside. That was the easy way to get the furniture in. Otherwise, they'd have to go around the front, go through 2 doors, one of them locked, and all the way down the long hallway.
Anything else you remember other than that?
Joyce was just sitting right there beside her door. Joyce was asking people that would go by to please let me in the room. The family members told me that. Family members of Joyce Redding said she's asking people to take her in her room so she can use the bathroom.
You're hearing this from family members telling you after the fact?
No. While they were moving Joyce Redding, while they were moving her furniture, they came to me and said, "This lady up here needs to go in the bathroom." It was almost time for me to go home, so I told this lady that my issue was coming to take her to the bathroom.
What time did this occur?
Between 7 and 7:30.
So a representative of this Redding family, was it male or female,
I don't remember.
comes to you, right? Mm-hmm. And where were you?
Finishing up report.
Where?
Probably at the nursing station.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. She walks, or he walks, till the way to the nursing station, down the hall, finds you, and tells you that Miss Myers is trying to go to the bathroom?
Is asking people to open her door and let her in her room
To let her in her room
because she needed to go to the bathroom.
because she needed to go to the bathroom.
Correct.
What did you do?
I told Maisha.
Did you see Miss Myers down the hall when they came to notify you of
She
this?
was sitting right by her door.
Okay, so they come to you, they tell you this while you're at the nursing station, and you're looking down the hallway and you can see Miss Myers sitting in her wheelchair outside her door.
Yes.
Okay. And then what did you do?
Asked Maisha to take her to the bathroom
Where was Maisha?
with another resident.
Where?
I don't remember where. But I went and found her. I went to get her and told her to please take Maisha. Please take Miss Redding, Miss Myers to the bathroom. She needs to go to the bathroom.
So you stopped filling out whatever you were filling out at the nursing station.
I wasn't filling out anything, I was talking.
Who were you talking to?
The nurse coming on,
So you were talking to the nurse who was coming on. Were you delivering a nurse's report?
yes.
Okay.
And guess who it was?
Carly Willis.
Carly. Yeah.
So you're talking to Carly Willis. And so Carly Willis would have heard the same thing, wouldn't she?
Yes, she would have.
Okay. Can you tell me why she didn't mention anything like
I
that?
have no idea.
So you're talking to Carly Willis, giving the nurse's report. At shift change?
It was after 7, yes.
After change of shift. So rather than Carly taking care of the problem, you decide you're going to go away from the nurse's station, find Maisha Van, who's dealing with someone else at this time, and tell Maisha Van you need to go take care of Miss Myers. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
And what exactly did you tell Miss Van?
I said, Maisha, Joyce Myers needs to go to the bathroom. And she's asking everybody going up and down the hall to let her in her room.
Anything else?
No.
So what did Maisha do?
She had to finish doing what she was doing. She had a patient. She was changing or had a patient up to the bathroom. She was toileting a resident.
Why didn't you go let Miss Myers in her room and toilet her?
I had to finish my report.
Couldn't it wait for you to let her go to the bathroom?
Maisha was on her way.
Well, apparently she wasn't. She was caring for another resident, providing toileting.
But I thought she was on her way.
Well, what does on her way mean? A minute? 5
I
minutes?
don't
How
know.
long?
Whatever, as long as it takes her to get another resident's clothes pulled back up and her get over to Miss Myers.
You're not on duty at this point, right?
I hadn't clocked out.
You hadn't clocked out. So that's what I'm trying to understand. Is Nurse Willis on duty at this time, or are you on duty at this time?
She was on duty.
Okay. So rather than letting the nurse on duty take care of this, you decide on your own you're going to take care of it by telling someone else to take care of it.
I was not going to let her sit there wanting to go to the bathroom.
Well, apparently you did.
Well, I know I didn't. I went and told Maisha.
But you let her sit out there in the hallway waiting on Maisha.
I thought Maisha
Right.
was on her way.
Okay. Can you tell me why Miss Van didn't mention any of this in her deposition?
I do not know.
Can you tell me why both people who were involved in this situation don't mention any of this in their testimony?
I do not know.
So what happened to Miss Myers while you're giving a nurse's report? Well, strike that. You go talk to Miss Van. What'd you do after you told Miss Van to go take care of Miss Myers?
I came back and finished the report.
Okay. And so again, Carly Willis would have observed you going to talk to Miss Van to have Miss Van help Miss Myers when she could get to it.
Correct.
All right. So you go back and give your nurse's report.
Finished
You still
the
see Miss
report.
Myers out in the hallway?
I did.
Did you keep an eye on her?
I did.
Okay. What happened next?
I clocked out.
You clocked out. And then where'd you go?
Out the back door and got in my car and went home.
Okay. So you had to walk past Miss Myers,
No,
correct?
I didn't walk past Miss Myers. She was sitting right beside the door. Her bedroom door was right next to the door to the nurse's lounge.
Okay, I'm a little confused. Where you are when you're leaving, how close did you get to Miss Myers?
Probably from here to that door.
Okay. That's looks to me to be about maybe 15 feet. Is that right?
Probably.
Okay. You knew at that time Miss Van still hadn't come to help Miss Myers, didn't you?
I figured she was on her way.
Okay. So you couldn't go that extra 15 feet and let Miss Myers in her room and help her go to the toilet.
It was already almost 7:30. They frowned on us working overtime.
You told me earlier in your testimony that when a resident isn't being toileted, it's possible that resident might try to get up and go to the bathroom on their own. Correct?
That's true.
That was a risk, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And that was a risk you took as you're leaving, wasn't it?
I thought Maisha was on her way.
I understand what you thought, but that was a risk you took as you're leaving, wasn't it?
I don't know.
So as it stands in your testimony, when you leave at 7:30?
I don't know. Between 7 and 7:30. It was almost 7:30.
It was almost 7:30. Your testimony is you leave the facility with Miss Myers sitting in a hallway, needing to go to the bathroom. That's your testimony.
That's what I said.
Do you know when Miss Band said she found Miss Myers on the floor?
No.
Once you assume that she said 7:30. Further, once you assume Carly Willis found Miss Myers after being asked by Miss Band to come to the room on the floor at 7:30. Okay?
Okay.
Your testimony is you left before this happened at or near 7:30.
Whatever time I clocked out.
How do we know when you clocked out? Is there a way to find
It would
out?
be on record
Where?
at the facility
I know that, ma'am. I figured that out. Where at the facility?
on the time clock.
Okay, so if I asked Mr. Conley to go check with management at Hickory Hills, they should be able to provide a record of when you clocked out, correct?
Yes.
We produced a claim.
Okay. Well, I missed it, so I guess I'll have to go looking. Do you know how Miss Myers got into her room?
I do not.
You agree it couldn't be the Redding family, could it?
I do not know who let her in that room.
They wouldn't have had a key to her room, would they?
They had a master key.
Well, we kind of went back through this. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought you told me they weren't given a master key.
I did not say they weren't given a master key.
Okay. So the Reddings had a key that could open any door in that facility.
That is correct. I gave it to them.
Well, I missed that. When did you give these people a master key?
When they came to move Miss Redding's things into her room, the door was locked. They needed a key because they were going back and forth to their vehicle, getting her furniture. Right around the corner from Miss Redding's room was a resident that wandered in and out rooms. That's why we kept the doors locked. They had a lot of wanderers.
So you gave these people a key that could open up Miss Myers' room,
I did.
and you knew there was a risk that they might open up her door.
I had no idea they were going to open her door.
If you give them a key, it can open up any door in the facility, can't it? That's a yes, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What do you know about the Reddings?
What do I know about them now?
What do you know then?
I didn't know anything about the Reddings.
How do you know one of the Reddings isn't some rapist?
Objection.
I didn't.
How do you know the Reddings aren't weirdos?
I didn't.
Objection.
How do you know the Reddings wouldn't try to open up the door and let Miss Myers in there and shut the door behind her locked?
I didn't.
Objection.
That's on you, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is, I guess, if you say so.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just asking you. You agree that's on you because it was your duty as a charge nurse to give that key.
Objection.
Wasn't it?
The director of nursing told me to give them that key.
Okay, so the director of nursing is who?
Marcy.
So Marcy told you to give the Reddings a master key.
So they could get in and move in Miss Redding's belongings.
Okay, so it's Marcy's responsibility, not yours.
I don't know.
But nevertheless, you had the key in your hand, right?
Yes.
Went and got it, right?
They came to the nurse's station and
And gave it to the Reddings.
I did. I was told to give it to them.
Told to give it to them. So as I understand, you were the charge nurse from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And apparently, you're still providing nursing services by going and telling Maisha that she needs to let Miss Myers get into her room and go to the bathroom, correct?
Correct.
And it's your responsibility, or you're still a charge nurse when you give the Reddings a master key, correct?
Correct.
How often did you check on Miss Myers during your shift that day?
How often?
Yes, ma'am.
As often as I could see her in the hallway.
I need to know how often.
I do not know how often.
Okay. Now, I said check. I didn't say see. I'm looking at these walls here. That's seeing. I'm talking about checking.
When I
How
gave
often
her
did you check
when
on
I
her?
gave her her medications, when I took her to the dining room, when I took her out of the dining room, when she went out of the dining room,
Okay, let's talk about all those times. When did you give her medications?
in the morning.
Just give me times. That's all I want to know.
I didn't give her any medications in the afternoon.
Tell me all the times you gave her medications.
In the morning, whatever is on here. In the
Oh.
mornings and at noon if it was ordered.
I need times.
7:30, 11:30. That's it.
You only checked on her 7:30, 11:30?
I didn't say I checked on her at 7:30 and 11:30. I gave her medications at 7:30 and 11:30.
Okay. So we have 2 times then you checked on her. What other times did you check on her?
All during the day, several times during the day. I check on all my residents during the day.
Okay. I need times, ma'am.
I don't know what times. Different times. I can't check on everybody at the same time.
Okay. You said you took her to dinner? Did
I
hear
didn't
you
say
right?
I took her to dinner. She was in the dining room at dinner.
I must have misunderstood. How many times did you see her at dinner?
I was passing medications in the dining room
And what time was that?
between 5:30 and 6:30.
Okay. Did you check on her?
I did.
And what did you do?
I could just see her. She was eating.
Sure. I don't mean see. I mean, when did you check on her? When I say check, I mean asking her how she's doing.
I did not go from one resident to the other in the dining room checking on them. I made sure she ate her food because she was a picky eater and didn't eat a lot.
So that's what I'm primarily concerned with, is when you checked on her. Did you check on her at all on the 27th?
I did.
Can you tell me when?
I don't know when.
Was it customary at Hickory Hills for residents to be checked on every 2 hours?
No.
What was the minimum amount of time that caregivers and nurses would check on residents at Hickory Hills?
Any chance we got. There was no set time.
Well, what if a resident went 3 hours without being checked? Was that acceptable
Objection.
from what you observed?
If I didn't check on them, the caregivers would be checking on them.
If I understand your testimony, we'll make sure I got it right with the arbitrator. You're going to tell the arbitrator you checked on Miss Myers, but you don't know when. Is that right?
Correct.
And are you going to tell the arbitrator you checked on her more than once,
Yes.
but you don't know when?
Right.
Are you going to tell the arbitrator you checked on her twice, but don't know when?
I don't know how many times I checked on her, but I checked on her.
And in checking on her, did you ask whether she needed to go to the bathroom?
You don't have to ask Joyce if she needed to go to the bathroom. She'd tell you when she needed to go to the bathroom.
Let's assume there's testimony from the 2 nurses at that facility who said you also had to ask her because sometimes she wouldn't tell you. Okay? Did you ever ask her if she needed to go to the bathroom?
No.
Objection.
Did anyone at the facility ever tell you that Miss Myers had been discovered wet on multiple occasions?
No.
Now you said that there's an incident report that's supposed to be filled out when there is a fall on the premises. Is that right?
Correct.
And that's something happens in the ordinary course of business there?
If an incident happens, there should be an incident report in the Yardy system.
In the Yardy system. Tell me about how the incident report system works.
There's paperwork you can fill out. If you can't get in the computer. When I first went to work there, I couldn't get in. I didn't have a password, so I had to fill out the papers. But in Yardy, there's a system, and the information is what incident? Was it a fall? Was it a medication error? What kind of incident was it? And who reported it? Was it witnessed? Vital signs. What kind of procedure did you follow? Did you call the family? Did you call the ambulance? Did they have to go to the hospital? And there's a diagram. If there was an injury, you mark on the diagram. But I don't think the diagram was in the computer. It was just on the paper.
But that's supposed to be done every time a resident falls, correct?
Not just a fall, any kind of incident.
Okay. Let's confine ourselves to falls for the moment.
Okay.
That incident report is a way for everyone to record what happened.
Correct.
And the charge nurse who's on duty is supposed to fill out that incident report.
Correct.
And that incident report is supposed to be filled out accurately, correct?
Correct.
Truthfully,
Correct.
and then submitted as soon as possible to the director.
Correct.
And then it goes to wherever it's supposed to go, correct?
Correct.
Have you read the incident report from Ms. Myers?
No,
Were you curious to find out what happened to her?
I know what happened.
And how
I
did
was
you?
told what happened. Carly called me at home and gave me details of what happened.
Okay. What did Carly tell you?
That she fell, hit her head.
Well, did she provide any more information than that?
She was unconscious.
That's what Carly told you?
That's what she told me.
Okay. Anything else Carly told you?
Not that I can recall.
Did you ask her why she fell?
I knew why she fell. She was in the room by herself.
Okay, so Carly told you that too.
Yeah, she did.
Okay. Anything else Carly told you?
And I don't remember.
Were you curious as to why she was in the room by herself?
Probably. I don't know.
Well, you were on the phone call. I wasn't. Just asking. You don't know?
No.
Do you know how she was found?
No.
Were you curious to know that?
She probably told me.
Did you ask her whether Miss Van had toileted Miss Myers like you expected her to?
No.
Were you
I
curious?
was at home.
I understand you were at home. I'm trying to gauge, obviously the arbitrator's going to have to decide whether he believes you. So part of that is knowing every fact and tidbit we can find out that helps him make that decision.
Okay.
And part of that is trying to find out after the fact where your testimony differs from other people's. And so that's why I'm trying to ask you these things to figure out what you know and what you don't, and what you're curious about and what you're not. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Okay. So were you curious to find out why she was in her room by herself?
I don't remember what Carly, all of what Carly told me. I don't remember what I asked Carly. I mean, how long ago has that been?
How many patients have died on your watch?
Objection.
None.
How many patients have fallen because of something you did or failed to do?
None.
I assume you don't accept any responsibility for what happened in Ms.
I
Myers,
sure do.
you?
Well, I wasn't there when she fell. I didn't let her in the room.
You can't have it both ways. You first can't say, I sure do, and then you say, well, I wasn't there. So which is it?
I wasn't there.
Okay, so you don't feel any responsibility for her.
I was not responsible.
You never asked to look at the incident report?
I saw the incident report
When did you see the incident report?
right after it happened. I looked in the computer and saw it.
So there's a computer incident report.
There should have been.
Well, when you say there should have been, you saw it,
I saw
right?
in the computer all the same stuff Carly wrote on the sheets that she turned in. She put it in the computer.
Okay, so the incident report in this case that I've seen is handwritten.
It should have been in the computer. It was in the computer.
Hear me out. The incident report that I've seen, I can go get a copy for if maybe that's helpful if I go get you a copy so
That's
you can
okay.
see. Okay. Let's take a couple minutes and get that, and I'm getting near the end. But I'll make sure you're not saying.
Going off the record, time on the monitor is 14:27. We're back on the record, time on the monitor is 14:30.
All right. We need to make that medication sheet an exhibit, Craig. I don't care with the highlighting on it, but if you care, we can substitute another.
Let me see it.
Make sure it doesn't have any notes or anything on it.
When you only refer, it's multiple pages. It's her entire MAR.
Right. And I'm only talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I can use mine. I've got a copy. It's just,
You got a copy
I
of
do.
better numbers?
I did, well, you can't see them as well, but
Well, just make a copy of this
Cool.
when we finish. We
All
can
right.
mark it as, was it 3?
Yeah, I've only marked 2 so far.
Okay.
3.
Mark it at 3.
okay. All right. All right. Ms. Kemper, I've handed you the incident report that was filled out by Carly Willis. The part of it I'm concerned about, let's put it that way. Is this what you saw on the computer when you looked at the computer?
No.
Okay. So you were looking at something different.
No, the incident report normally is put into the computer. This is fine to fill out, but I was always told, put it in our, in the computer, in Yardi.
All right. Going down a little different path here. I thought you told me before the break, the next day you went and looked at the incident report on the computer.
I did.
Okay. That
It's not
handwritten
like this
form,
in there.
that's what I'm asking. So
No.
what you saw is not what's indicated there
Correct.
on the handwritten incident report. Let's make that the next exhibit to our testimony. Let me hand you what is the first responder to an incident report that was filled out by Maisha Van.
Now I know what a first responder report is. This is the person that found them.
Okay. Did you see this on the computer
I did
when
not.
you were looking?
This doesn't go on the computer.
All right. Let's make that the next exhibit. She needs to mark that, Ms. Kemper.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Kemper, if you just take a couple of minutes to read through the handwritten part, that's Exhibit 3 there, that Carly Willis filled out, because you'll see on the, well, there's a long narrative written by Carly Willis. I presume you didn't read a handwritten narrative either, did you?
No, I didn't.
Did you determine when you read the incident report on the computer whether Miss Van had found Miss Myers in the room when she went looking for her?
It would say so in Yardi.
Did you talk to Miss Van after this to get her version of what had happened?
I did not.
Did Miss Van come to you and ask you anything or tell you anything about what had happened?
She did not.
Did you find out that Miss Van had been asked to leave the premises by Nurse Holmes that evening?
I didn't know that either.
Is there anything about the incident that you can think of that you learned in reading the computer incident report that we haven't discussed already?
No.
When residents died at the facility, was there a little shrine that was kept behind the nurse's station in one of those rooms? Where a little LED candle was lit for maybe about a week or so?
No.
Was there any kind of memorial inside the facility for the residents when they passed away?
There was a picture frame that would sit on the nurse's station shelf counter with the patient's picture and in memory of, that sort of thing.
Did you see something like that for Joyce Myers?
I don't remember.
Do you remember when the state came and inspected the premises after this?
I do.
When?
I don't know when they came. I know they came.
Was it within days?
I don't remember how many days.
Did you speak to anybody from the state of Tennessee?
I did.
And did you tell them what you're telling us here today?
I did.
So you told the investigators for the state of Tennessee everything you've told us here today.
I did.
Nothing's changed, nothing added or subtracted from what you told the state.
Not that I can recall.
Okay. Do you remember who it was who interviewed you?
I do not. A lady.
I want to show you a picture that the facility sent me, which is a view from the nursing station. You see that right there?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the view as you look out down the front of the facility where Miss Myers' room would be?
It is.
All right. And we just kind of call that the hallway.
Well, the hall went that way, and it went that way.
But we're focusing on hers, right? And I presume that that would be the view looking outside Miss Myers' room back towards the nursing station, correct? Okay. What I would like you to do is you've testified that Miss Myers was sitting in her wheelchair, I wrote down, outside of her room. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Was she on her side of the hall or the other side of the hall?
Her side of the hall, right next to her door.
All right. And you said you approached her within approximately 15 feet before you left.
I did.
All right. Can you mark on either one of those pictures, and I'll give you a pen here, where you were when you got as close to Miss Myers as you got before you left?
You want me to mark here or here or what?
Anywhere would be fine, just so we get an approximation. Yeah, let's see. Might need to do better than that.
That's
Let's
just
go show
before I went through this door, the clock out door.
Okay, that's great. Why don't you put an arrow pointing at the door from the side? There you go. And then next to that arrow, put your initials SK. Let's see that. Okay, that looks like you're pointing to the staff-only door.
Right.
Okay, that's the door you walked out.
Correct.
All right. And as you walked out, Miss Myers was outside her room where her door is, correct?
Correct.
And who else, if anybody, was in the hallway near her as you walked out the staff-only door?
Directly across this room, not this room, but there's another room right here. Miss Redding's family was there.
What room number is that?
20.
Okay. So the family, were they in the room or were they in the hallway?
There were several of those family members. They were going back and forth. They went from this door through this door right here, directly across the hall, through. There was a dirty utility door and a clean utility door. Both of them went into the laundry room, and through the laundry room to the door outside. They were going back and forth, bringing in her belongings, furniture, clothes, lamps, whatever.
Okay. And where was Maisha at that time?
With a resident.
I know that. I'm talking about where in the facility.
I don't remember.
Because when you walked away from the nurse's station to go,
I went out this way. She was in this hall down here.
Oh, which hall is that? If you just describe it, I'm sure Miss Holmes will know which one you're talking about. Which hallway was it?
The hallway that goes down toward the other nurse's station.
Okay.
Miss Myers' door was right at the corner. I mean, it was at the end of the hall.
I know where it was. I just want to know where Miss Van was when
She
you
was
talked
down
to
there
Miss Van.
somewhere.
Talk to her. You would agree with me, Miss Kemper, that seeing a resident isn't the same thing as checking them.
I agree.
Did we mark that as an exhibit, that picture? Photo?
If I didn't, we need to, let's mark that as an exhibit, please.
That's 6.
That would be 5.
Let's mark that as 5, and then, actually, we probably mark that one as 5, which is the first one she looked at looking down the hallway, and we'll mark that one as 6 that she drew on.
Yeah, I got off. Yeah.
That's where my mistake was.
So 5 and 6.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Ms. Kemper, just a few follow-up questions, and we're going to get you out of here so you can get back to Paris and get to work. So, as far as how Miss Myers got into her room that evening, you have no idea. Is that
I
correct?
have no idea.
And you did not let her in the room,
I
correct?
did not.
Now, as far as our conversation on October 21st of 2019, I think you've told us earlier, you have no recollection of what we discussed that day. Is that correct?
I do. That is correct. I don't.
You've been an LPN since when?
1984.
Was the service plan marked as an exhibit?
Should have been. Yep.
I don't have it marked, but that's on my notes, but that's fine.
It's the
Oh, no.
scoring for the service plan.
It's the what?
The scoring sheet.
Yeah,
for the
I'm sorry.
service plan.
On Exhibit 2, can you tell us who prepared or made the assessment of Ms. Myers for that document? Where it says assessed by, is there a name out beside that?
Marcy
What's Marcy's last name?
Patterson.
She was director of nursing, correct?
Correct.
You didn't prepare that document,
I
right?
did not.
When residents are observed or checked on at Hickory Hills, there's no charting of that.
Correct.
Okay. And Ms. Myers could make her wants and her needs and wants known, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if she needed to go to the bathroom, she could tell you, right?
Correct.
And if she needed to go to, she wanted something to eat, she could tell you, right?
Correct.
And as you testified, you continuously saw Ms. Myers that day throughout the facility, but primarily up and down her hall.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's it.
One. Ms. Kemper, if you did the facility ask you to make a written statement like they did the other nurses about what happened
No.
at that time?
No. I
See-
wasn't there when it happened.
You were there immediately before it happened.
Correct.
as were the other caregivers, correct? Like Miss
Correct.
Adams?
Correct.
But you didn't get asked to make any statements.
No.
That's all I have.
All right. This concludes the deposition of Sandra Kemper. Time on the monitor is 14:46.